Days before their arraignment, Jake and Rebecca Haro made a move no one saw coming. They reached for legal counsel tied to David and Louise Turpin, the so-called House of Horrors parents, infamous for imprisoning and torturing their 13 children. One family of abusers, now linked to another. The question is simple. What does it mean? And the answer may change everything. This is the case of baby Emmanuel Haro and the alliance that chills. August. A baby boy named Emmanuel Haro goes missing. He was only 7 months old. At first, his parents, 32-year-old Jake Haro and 41-year-old Rebecca Haro, told police a heartbreaking story. Their baby had been kidnapped from a parking lot. But almost immediately, investigators noticed cracks, inconsistencies, pieces that didn't fit. Days later, the narrative shifted from desperation to suspicion. The Haros weren't pleading victims anymore. They were defendants, charged with murder and falsifying a police report. Their bond, set at $1 million. And behind every headline was one horrifying truth. Emmanuel's tiny body was still missing. Authorities believe Emmanuel was killed sometime between August 4th and August 15th. Despite extensive searches where Jake Haro himself walked alongside investigators, his remains have never been recovered. A child vanished, a family accused, and a community left to wonder if the people meant to protect him were the very ones who sealed his fate. August 26th. Courtroom doors creak open. Jake and Rebecca Haro stand before the judge. The charges: murder and false reporting. Their pleas: not guilty. Cameras click, journalists lean in, and the words echo louder than the gavel. $1 million bail. Outside the courthouse, questions spread like wildfire. Why lie about a kidnapping? Why cover up their son's fate? And why, above all else, had his little body never been found? Investigators combed fields, drainage ditches, even pits in remote areas. But every search ended the same way, with silence. The kind of silence that chills a town, that keeps mothers awake at night, holding their own babies just a little closer. If you're here and haven't subscribed yet, ask yourself, why would you turn away now? A baby is gone, justice hangs in the balance, and this story will only get darker. Hit subscribe because stories like this one deserve to be heard. And if you choose not to subscribe, leave a comment. Tell us why. Because silence is what allowed Emmanuel's case to fade into the dark in the first place. Don't be silent now. But just when the world thought this case was already too twisted to bear, another name entered the courtroom, a name forever tied to the darkest family in true crime history, the Turpins. And with that, Emmanuel's tragedy collided with the legacy of the House of Horrors. To understand why the Haro's choice of counsel sent shockwaves through the true crime world, we need to step back to a name that still makes people shudder: the Turpins. David and Louise Turpin, parents of 13. To the outside world, they seem like a quirky, if reclusive, family. Matching outfits, forced smiles, and staged photos. But inside their Paris, California home was something far darker. For years, their children lived imprisoned, chained to beds, starved until their bones pushed against their skin, denied even the most basic care. Showers, medicine, education, things you and I take for granted, were stripped away. Then, in 2018, a miracle. A teenage daughter, Jordan Turpin, climbed through a window and dialed 911. Her voice, trembling, carried the weight of 12 siblings' lives. That single call shattered the facade and revealed the House of Horrors. The world watched in disbelief as police entered that home, stepping over filth, shackles, and broken humanity. And the Turpins? They pleaded guilty, sentenced to life in prison. But the true horror wasn't just in the crimes. It was in the aftermath. Children so starved they didn't know what a toothbrush was. A teenager who couldn't recognize medicine. Years of neglect carved into every memory, every scar. And even after their so-called rescue, reports showed failure after failure by the very systems meant to protect them. Agencies missed signs. Social workers looked away. The court itself could not shield them from further harm. Trauma repeating itself in plain sight. That's the weight the Turpin case carries. It's not just another headline. It's a permanent scar on America's conscience. a reminder of what happens when abuse festers in silence. On social media, the Turpin name became infamous. Documentaries, YouTube breakdowns, TikToks dissecting every detail. The story etched itself into collective memory. Forever a symbol of cruelty and survival. People share it because they can't believe it happened in their lifetime, and because it could happen again. And now, years later, that same name resurfaces. Not in a history book, not in a documentary, but inside a courtroom, tied directly to the Haro family. Ask yourself, what does it mean when baby Emmanuel's fate collides with the legacy of the House of Horrors? If you're not subscribed yet, this is the moment. Because what happens next, what's revealed next, will disturb you in ways you're not ready for. August 2024. The Haro family case was already spiraling: murder charges, a missing child, a community demanding answers. But then a twist no one could have predicted. Jake Haro walks into court, and sitting beside him is a face tied to a nightmare from 6 years earlier. His new attorney, Paulette Garthwaite, a woman who once defended David Turpin, the father at the center of the House of Horrors. Think about that. One of the most reviled names in modern true crime, now connected by legal counsel to another family accused of the unthinkable. The question is why? Was this a cold, calculated legal strategy? Or something more? A symbolic act, meant to send a message that even the most despised families still deserve defense. Experts weighed in online, attorneys, commentators, even true crime creators on YouTube and TikTok. Some said it's tactical. After all, who better to navigate a storm of public hatred than a lawyer who's weathered it before? Others weren't so sure. They called it tone-deaf, even grotesque, a defense strategy doomed from the start. And the public? Outrage. Facebook threads exploded. Instagram stories circulated with words like monstrous and unholy alliance. On TikTok, videos dissected the Haro-Turpin connection, racking up hundreds of thousands of views in hours. Podcasts like Mama Mystery fanned the flames. Was this coincidence, or something darker? The frenzy grew so fast it almost drowned out the case itself. Baby Emmanuel, still missing, still voiceless, risked becoming overshadowed by courtroom theater. And that's the danger here. When the spotlight shifts from the victim to the spectacle, justice becomes entertainment. But for Emmanuel, this isn't a show. This is the difference between truth and silence. If you haven't subscribed yet, ask yourself, why look away when stories like this prove that real horror doesn't live in movies? It lives in our world? And if you're one of the few who won't subscribe, explain it in the comments. Because silence here is complicity. Rebecca Haro sat in court, her voice trembling, her eyes red from nights of tears. She insisted, "I will not give up on my baby." To some, those were the words of a grieving mother. To others, a desperate attempt to mask the unthinkable. This is where the line blurs. On one side, horror. A child missing, parents accused of murder, lies unraveling under police lights. On the other side, humanity. A mother's plea, a father's silence, a family fractured beyond repair. But can we allow empathy to cloud accountability? That's the ethical knife's edge we walk in this case.
Think of the Turpins. Their children were so isolated, so deprived, they didn't even recognize medicine. Imagine the scale of trauma it takes for the basics of survival to feel like forbidden knowledge. When we look at the Haros, the question lingers, are we watching a tragedy repeat itself? These echoes force us to confront uncomfortable truths. When does understanding pain become excusing harm? Can justice be both compassionate and uncompromising? And then comes the hardest question of all. Is this defense even ethically defensible? A lawyer tied to one of America's darkest child abuse cases, now standing for a couple accused of murdering their infant son. Is that justice at work? Or justice on trial? Legal scholars call it strategy. Survivors call it betrayal. And the public? They can't look away, because every courtroom gesture feels like a performance, every headline like a spotlight. We are no longer watching a trial, we are watching theater. But at the center of all this noise is Emmanuel. A baby who should have celebrated a first birthday. who should have grown up with cake, with laughter, with a future. Instead, he's become a symbol in a battle between law, morality, and spectacle. If you're still watching and you haven't subscribed, I need you to stop and think. What does it say if we consume stories like this, but walk away without giving them weight? Subscribing isn't just a click, it's saying Emmanuel's story matters. And if you refuse, then at least leave a comment and explain why. Because silence? Silence is choosing to let the story fade. September 4th. That's the next court date. The Haros will face a judge once again, while Emmanuel's remains remain unfound. Every day that passes without answers is another day justice is delayed, another day his tiny voice is silenced. The charges stand: murder, false reporting. The bail sits at $1 million. But the truth? It's still out there, buried under lies, sealed behind courtroom doors, hidden in the shadows of two families whose names are now tied together forever. And that's the haunting part. When the echoes of the Turpins bleed into the cries for Emmanuel, we're forced to ask, what happens when one tragedy props up another? What happens when justice itself feels compromised? This isn't over. Not by a long shot. The Haro case is still unfolding, and every step forward brings new revelations, new debates, new fractures in how we understand family, trauma, and the law. Pause. Lower tone. But don't forget, at the heart of this isn't a legal strategy. It isn't headlines or social media frenzy. It's Emmanuel. A baby who should be alive. A baby who deserved a future. So when the silhouettes of tragedies overlap, when one family of abusers lends its shadow to another, justice must emerge from the echoes. The Haro-Turpin connection, an alliance that chills. Stay with us. Because this story is far from over. And if you've made it this far without subscribing, I'll be blunt, you're taking without giving. Don't let Emmanuel become another story you scroll past. Subscribe now, or at least leave your reason in the comments, because silence, in cases like this, is complicity.